Introduce Kratos, the famously brutal Spartan antihero who spent the better part of 2 decades ripping the ancient Greek pantheon to shreds. Over the course of his journey, he earns the ultimate title, the God of War. But despite that very specific job description, his character isn't actually based on an ancient Greek war god at all. In fact, the studio developers have admitted they chose the name Kratos entirely by accident. They picked it late in the process, long after his iconic ash-colored character design was totally finished. So if the modern Kratos wasn't intentionally modeled after a single specific deity, what exact pieces of classical mythology were stitched together to build him? The answer is that he's a narrative Frankenstein. He is constructed from 2 very distinct classical blueprints, both of which his modern storyline completely betrays. Let's start with his actual namesake. In ancient Greek texts, there really is a mythological entity named Kratos, and he serves as the divine personification of raw strength. According to the ancient writer Hesiod, this original Kratos was heavily rewarded after the fall of the Titans. Zeus granted him an exalted, permanent position by his side, making him a fiercely loyal servant to the throne. Later, the playwright Aeschylus expands on this, writing Kratos as an uncompromising thug. He's an enforcer who openly mocks pity, arguing that the absolute best way to control the world is through strict oppression and fear. We see this when he orders the blacksmith Hephaestus to brutally chain Prometheus to a rock for giving humanity fire. Compare that to the video game. Instead of chaining the Titan, the modern Kratos actively frees Prometheus, shattering those chains to end his torment. The original mythological Kratos was a blindly loyal, pro-establishment henchman. That makes him the exact opposite of the rebellious, anti-establishment god-killer we play today. So if he isn't acting like the Greek Kratos, who is he acting like? To find the hidden foundation for his character arc, we have to look at Greece's most famous tragic hero, Hercules. Both start with a manipulated tragedy. Ares tricks Kratos, and Hera drives Hercules into a frenzy. This results in the same crime. Each brutally slaughters his family. Consequently, Kratos becomes the cursed ghost of Sparta, and both are forced onto a lifelong path of penance. When you line up the beats, it's clear that Kratos' lore isn't an entirely original invention. It is a heavily repurposed Herculean model, borrowing the exact structure of a guilt-ridden hero seeking redemption. The studio engineered a character who possesses the brutal strength of his namesake, Kratos, paired perfectly with the deep, tragic guilt of Hercules. But in classical storytelling, this was the god of strength, not war, and functioned as a fanatically loyal agent of the regime. In the original myths, Kratos exists as the ultimate establishment figure, Mount Olympus's most loyal and brutal enforcer. This role was forged during the Titanomachy, the cosmic war where Zeus recruited allies to overthrow the old Titans and seize control of the universe. One of the first deities to answer Zeus's call was the Oceanid Styx. As a pledge of loyalty, she brought her 4 children to serve at the king's side. 2 of these siblings represented the psychological and physical tools of rule: Zealous, the personification of zeal and dedication, and Bia, the embodiment of raw, forceful energy. They were joined by Nike, the goddess of victory, whose image would eventually become a staple of ancient Greek art and architecture. Kratos completed the group as the divine personification of strength. Together, they occupied a unique position on Olympus. They had no home of their own, living instead in the palace of Zeus to be on constant call as his personal enforcers. This 4-part squad created a totalizing system of control, where Kratos provided the sheer muscle required to keep Zeus's new order in place. The clearest example of this system in action is the myth of Prometheus. After the war, Zeus intended to keep humanity weak, but Prometheus defied him, gifting humans fire, navigation, and the arts. To maintain his authority, Zeus sentenced Prometheus to be chained to a mountain rock for eternity using unbreakable bonds. In the play Prometheus Bound by Aeschylus, Kratos and Bia are the ones who physically drag the Titan to the jagged peaks of the Caucasus Mountains to face his punishment. At the summit, Hephaestus, the god of the forge, hesitates, paralyzed by pity for the Titan. But Kratos offers no such sympathy. He mocks the smith's hesitation, arguing that because every god is subject to Zeus, absolute obedience is the only form of safety. Kratos is the one who demands the most extreme brutality. He forces Hephaestus not just to chain the prisoner, but to drive a steel wedge directly through Prometheus's chest to ensure he can never move. This version of Kratos exists as a warning, a personification of power that recognizes no law and no morality other than the will of the tyrant it serves. Following the Prometheus myth, Kratos faded into the background of antiquity. For centuries, he remained a minor figure, often appearing as little more than a winged silhouette representing the abstract concept of power. His profile only began to rise in the 18th century, when scholars began translating Prometheus Bound into English, reintroducing his ruthless character to a wider audience. By 1820, Percy Bysshe Shelley used the Prometheus myth as the foundation for his own drama, Prometheus Unbound, which kept Kratos' specific brand of cold, structural violence in the cultural conversation. These two versions of Kratos represent two opposing views of power, one who finds strength in the preservation of an existing hierarchy, and another who finds it in that hierarchy's destruction. The name Kratos has remained a synonym for strength for over 2,000 years, but the happy mistake of a modern game studio reveals how much the context of that strength has changed, moving from the hand that tightens the chains to the one that breaks them.